7 News reporter Nicole Ford is live at Kid Venture to show us how the county is using this opportunity to gather information for this new complex. Nicole?
Well, Diane, Gordon, if you take a look, these closure signs have been up for nearly 10 days at Kid Venture. It all started with an initial complaint from a parent that their child was on equipment that was just too hot. So the county's taking this closure and the time to record the temperatures of each piece of equipment to try to determine what type of material and equipment is causing those concerns. Under the birch tree,
Kid Venture stays busy, probably out of the 24 hours a day, probably about 18 of them.
this popular park is quiet.
We took a long walk, and my son, he climbed the step, and as soon as he climbed the step, he's like, "Ow, Daddy, it's hot." So I said, "Okay, Max, and let's go to the other one because it has some shade." So we walked over here and see the sign that is closed.
The beating son taking a beating on the decades-old playground equipment.
It's a nice area, great neighborhood, and you want to have something safe for your kids.
Well, the closed signs are up as a precaution at Kid Venture.
And we're registering 151, but then in the shade it's 104.
The County Parks Department is using this time to gather information to take into the redevelopment of Kid Venture 2.0.
We're looking at how our parks are kind of comparing in the sun or in the shade. And so it's giving us a lot of information on potential tree cover, potential canopy cover, or potential structure changes, and even just as simple as orientation.
The new $1.5 million design allows for an ADA-compliant playground shaped like a flower with each petal for a different age bracket. But before the county and city invest in the project, they want to make sure they're doing everything to make it safe.
Well, it's 128. So we see a little bit difference here just because it's a deflecting angle versus a 90-degree or straight-on angle.
So each afternoon for the past 10 days, when the sun is at its peak, county officials are testing different pieces of equipment to determine how to limit the sun from shining through.
The center is where you're gonna have the shade structures. Now with some of what's coming, we're actually considering some additional shade structures throughout the petals just in the event of those hotter days.
Now, the county is actually testing playground equipment on all of their county parks, but because this one was the busiest, they had to shut it down in order to do this research. There's no exact date on when they'll reopen. We're live in Anderson County tonight. Nicole Ford, 7 News.
Thank you, Nicole. And construction on the first phase of the redevelopment of the park is expected to start within the next year.